to really partake of the medicine that Rev G speaks about in her prayers, partake of the medicine. These are really tumultuous times. These are times where there's rumblings. You know, Rev G talked this morning about the ground shifting. Look under her. Did you want me to do? I'm looking at her, but it's going like this.
You have to turn it on for it to work.
You know, I do this at kirtan. At kirtan, sometimes I sing my heart out, and I think I'm singing, and I'm in the microphone, and then at the end of the night, I discover, oh, it hasn't even been on.
You have to activate it.
You have to activate it, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that leads into what I wanted to talk about tonight, which is activating the force. You know, the force within us. I wanted to calling tonight's message, the force be with us, because the force is with us. We have to really learn how to use our lightsabers and discover our lightsabers. I don't know how many people here are Star Wars people or have ever seen Star Wars. So even if you're not an aficionado, you know that you know the Luke Skywalker and the he's the only one I can think of right now. Yeah. Well, Luke, they have these swords, and you know the sword of light. And so, in these times, we want to learn how to activate our power, our light power. You know, the forces seem so great right now on this planet. Mother Gaia is a little bit angry. We're seeing fires and floods and hurricanes, and we're seeing the volcanoes erupting, and the winds are coming up, and there's shifting going on the planet, and there's violence and killings and war and famine and all sorts of really dense and hard things that are going on the planet right now. And so we see an increase in depression, and we see an increase in anxiety, and it feels like doom, sometimes like doom on us. Seems like it. Seems like it. And then we hear Rev G tell us many times over that this is an illusion, that this is Maya, and that the illusion is really the appearance of fear. The illusion is that we are in this peril. You know, we are all connected. We are all connected in the past, in the present, and the future. We are all connected, and we have a collective unconscious. I don't know if you've ever heard of the collective unconscious, but we are a part of this collective unconscious. And there is a consciousness right now, and this is how I kind of see what's happening, is that we've had the collective pain body stimulated. If you're familiar with the work of Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the pain body. And the pain body is the collection of unresolved pain that we have in our life. The pain body on an individual level emerges because of the unresolved pain in our lives. And that's a very low energy. That pain, anger, is a low energy. It's a low vibration. The energy of fear, the energy of despair are lower energies, and they're denser energies. And they literally coalesce to form this pain body. And this pain body lives in our subconscious, and it can be activated like that. It could be activated by a perceived slight. It could be activated by rejection. It can be activated by anything. It could be activated by anything. And it's that culmination of pains and of hurts that haven't been resolved. And so we have these pain bodies. So, you know, as above, so below, we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. We are a microcosm of the whole. What we experience on an individual level is a reflection of what's going on in the macro. So this pain body, the collective unconscious that's been in fear, seated in fear, fear that is really amplified and generated by a lot of the media, a lot of what we're seeing on the news all the time. We're bombarded with these fearful messages, and we're bombarded with these lies. Now, the Toltecs, I don't know if people are familiar with, the Toltecs are South American and Central American spiritual people, and the shamans talk about the, we're all, like, their concept of the one is there's one living being. And in this living being is this living consciousness. Now we're on, if you've read the Four Agreements, he talks about how we've all learned these lies. And we've all learned these lies. And the lies are, we're not good enough. The lie that we bought into is there's not enough to go around, the scarcity mentality. There's not enough love, there's not enough money, there's not enough attention, there's not enough. So there's this collective not enough mentality that's in the subconscious. Now remember, this collective subconscious is an amalgamation. Thank you. An amalgamation of all of these thought forms. Native Americans talk about the dream weave. The dream weave is where we're all connected. And so if we are in these lower vibrations of fear and of not enough, there's not enough, and I am not loved, or I'm not enough, we are amplifying that in this cosmic web, and we see this outpouring of violence, and we see these lower vibrations taking form, and we see this hell on earth. We see that's what it looks like, and it breaks our hearts. It breaks my heart. I cry to think that this is the world that my grandchildren are coming into, that they're doing drills in school. Where do you hide from the shooter? Oh, that this is the world that we have now, that the 8-year-olds and the 10-year-olds are having to hide. That's the fear vibration, and that paralyzes me. And we need to cry, and we need to feel those, and we also need to be able to activate the light and to not buy into the lies of that there's not enough, and that people are bad. Rev B, Brenda, last week talked about original sin, and this concept. So many of us come into the world thinking that we're bad, thinking that we're bad. Now, Rev B illuminated for us the concept of original sin is really just about our humanness. And we were all like really relieved, oh, I'm not bad, I'm just human. And, but to think about in our psyches, like this feeling of badness, I'm not enough, nobody loves me, I'm bad, there's something innately wrong with me. And so we get into these lower, vibrations, and like I said, it feels like hell on earth. So, last time I spoke, I talked about another Don Miguel Ruiz book, Beyond Fear, where he talks about the path of the spiritual warrior. And this is where our lightsabers are going to come in, because this is where the Force awakens. And he said that a spiritual warrior walks through hell as though they're in heaven. Because a spiritual warrior is connected to higher consciousness. A spiritual warrior, that lightsaber is the awareness of our existence. That lightsaber is the higher frequencies. The higher frequency. Marianne Williamson says, spiritual transformation comes through saying the names of God. And I was like, ugh, what does that mean? Like, saying the names of God. For me, anytime God, who's beyond name and beyond form, is kind of personified, I find myself in resistance. But the way I started looking at this concept, and the concept is the name of God shall be our, in her mind, That's our lightsaber, the name of God. Well, one of the things that we've been learning here is that the Hindus and the Islamic Sufis and people of Islam talk about the names of God, and they have these wonderful names for God, but what they're naming are the attributes of God. And so when I kind of replace the word God with these attributes, then it makes sense to me. So love, so the way to spiritual transformation is love, an attribute of God, of the divine. The way to spiritual transformation is mercy, is compassion, is all forgiving, is all wisdom. The way to spiritual transformation is the way of the divine. And so when we name those attributes, and when we call upon those attributes, we are accessing that higher frequency. And the higher the frequency that we go, the higher consciousness we are. Now, God, I see, is the all. Is, is existence. Spirit is our aliveness. Spirit is that consciousness, is that life force within everything. And when we place our awareness on the life force within everything, we feel joy. When we place our awareness on existence, on the fact of I am, on the miracle of the I am, we cannot help but feel joy, because I am is a joyful state. The state of being is a joyful state. Oh, that I am is joy. This is what the Hindus really talk about. When they talk about existence, knowledge, and bliss is who we are, they're talking about the higher consciousness, the awareness that of the miracle of our existence is the higher consciousness. So when we want to rise up out of suffering, if we want to ascend, the ascension is going into the higher realms, and going into the higher realms is tapping into those energies of love, of compassion, of service, of mercy, those higher realms. The way we ascend that ladder into the higher realms, where we go beyond form and tap into the collective unconscious, where we can create change, is through calling in those qualities of God, through prayer, through satsanga like this. I mean, we're amplifying it, just getting together, we're amplifying our energies, we're raising our energies. When we ascend, and right, when you think about it, and I'm, Rev G is the biblical scholar in the family, but really we can kind of look, right? I mean, it seems like the suffering of Jesus, and then the ascension is in the higher realms of consciousness. Rev G talked about this morning in the metaphysical chapel, the rod of Aaron being higher consciousness. We are seeking to ascend. We are seeking to transcend and transform through higher realms of consciousness. And higher realms of consciousness are vibrations of love, vibrations of mercy, vibrations of compassion. It sounds so esoteric, the higher realms of consciousness, but we get there. We get there through amplification of the light. And when we place our consciousness, so this is the lightsaber, because somebody I was speaking to recently said, this is the biblical times of the forces of evil and good, because we're seeing all of this polarization, and we're seeing all of this, and we are in it. And we're studying the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna and Arjuna are on the battlefield, and some of us are like, I don't want to fight, I don't want to fight. But when we're spiritual warriors, if we're pulling our lightsabers of higher consciousness, and it takes work, it is not easy to stay positive in these times. That's our spiritual warrior task, to stay positive and to stay loving, and to keep our hearts open. In the Untethered Soul, Michael Singer talks about keeping our hearts in a state of surrender. That is not easy when we're faced with egoic ignorance and madness you know, the apparent reality of mayhem and violence, to maintain a state of positivity in itself is a revolutionary act, I believe. It is a choice that we make to keep our consciousness in heaven, in the higher realms, even though we are walking in these dense, painful energies and pain bodies everywhere. Just keep our consciousness on love, our consciousness on forgiveness, our consciousness on seeing the beauty everywhere, on seeing the oneness, on seeing the consciousness of existence, of seeing the life force energy in everything. That's our task. That's our task. In really like honoring that life force energy in everybody, no matter what they're perpetrating, knowing that that divinity, because we want to stay connected and we want to seed into the collective unconscious the possibilities for miracle, the possibilities for transformation. Which way in those higher realms? When we ascend beyond form, at higher vibrations, that's where we call on the angels. That's where we call on our spirit, our holy spirits, our guides up in that realm. And that's where we call in the transformative energies. And we must call in those transformative energies. So the other thing I just want to mention in groups like this, and so we're talking about what activates the lightsaber. So for some of us, it's kirtan, it's raising our energy higher and higher and getting to that place of bliss. Again, you know, that we cannot help but feel joy when we celebrate the fact that we exist and that there's this animating life force energy everywhere. Prayer. You know, prayer is a way to consciously connect and remember the divine holiness of spirit. These are our connections and our lightsabers. How many people have heard of the concept of the 100th monkey? So, the 100th monkey, let me just, I actually brought this thing, because the 100th monkey actually has a name. What was her name? So there were a bunch of researchers on an island in Japan, and they were studying these monkeys, and they gave these monkeys sweet potatoes. And the sweet potatoes were delicious, and the monkeys liked them, but they were sandy. And so this one little monkey, and I think her name was Micah, discovered that if she washed her sweet potato, it was, you know, it was better because the sand was off of it. So she started doing that, and she taught her little sister monkeys, and she taught her mother monkey, and then more and more monkeys on this island started washing their sweet potatoes. And over a course of like a couple of years, the whole entire island started washing their sweet potatoes, and it became you know, common on this island for the monkeys to wash their sweet potatoes. And then another monkey and another monkey washed their sweet potatoes, and then all over the world, monkeys started washing their sweet potatoes. That's the collective unconscious. That's that field of awareness that we can tap into. And so there's that tipping point. You also hear the tipping point. The 100th monkey is the tipping point. When enough circles come together and raise energy, put intention into celebrating the fact of our existence, you know, calling the names of God, which are love, you know, beauty, compassion, joy, the names of God, light, infinite love, spirit. And then there's the you know, we can then and call the names of God, you know, great mystery, beloved one, God, goddess, creator of all. In all of the infinite wisdom, we can vibrate that web. We can seed into the collective unconscious. Miracles can happen. A miracle is just a shift. A miracle is a shift in consciousness, and we hear that in A Course of Miracles. The shift in consciousness, the miracle is a shift in consciousness. Well, when enough of us shift our consciousness, we can seed that unconscious and create a miracle by tipping by being the 100th monkey. So I'm going to end by saying, let's be the 100th monkey. Let's be that person, that group who brings out the force, the lightsaber of consciousness, and tips the balance and see miracles in our time, in our moment, on this planet. So, thank you.